All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today is a very special and momentous episode of TWiP. You may have seen, if you follow TWiP at all on social media or on our email list, that we recently launched the newest addition to the TWiP network, and it's called AlphaMirrorless. So we decided to devote this episode of TWiP to talking about that show and some of the things that we had in mind when putting that show together, as well as just kind of a discussion about the general state of mirrorless, and specifically Sony Alpha mirrorless. So the hosts of that show are here with me as my guests. We've got Mr. Andy Williams joining us and Mr. Juan Pons. Hey guys, how you doing?
Howdy, Frederick. Hi, everybody.
How you doing, guys? Glad to be here.
This is gonna be good. Are you guys excited? I mean, we just launched that show a couple days ago, and already, I'm not gonna reveal the exact numbers, but I'm looking at the stats now. But already, you guys are competitive with some of the more popular shows on the TWiP network already, and we haven't even officially launched it. So,
It's super exciting, and we're seeing tons of feedback already from a couple of Facebook posts you made and we made, and I think people are ready to hear about this. So it is very exciting for both of us. Just, we were early adopters, of course, but it's fun to talk about, and the topics are great, and the audience is receptive. So we're really happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions out there. I mean, we get questions all the time about mirrorless and the advantages of mirrorless, having these small cameras, and there's so much. I mean, just like any transition that's happened, there's so much misinformation or uninformation, really, more than, or lack of information, that we wanted to be able to share all the information that we know with everybody out there.
Yeah, and I think what's cool about you guys is when we were kind of building the show, I think it was exciting to me because you guys aren't salespeople, you're not spokespeople for Sony, you are real users that go out with this gear in the trenches. I mean, you guys are you're on the road more than you're at home running workshops and putting this gear through its paces. So it's not like you're sitting on the couch watching The Walking Dead polishing your brand new piece of Sony gear.
Yeah, we're not pixel peepers. We're definitely putting this equipment through its ringer, and comparing it to everything else we've had before, and how it stacks up, how it holds up under use or consistent use. Not not those people that put the camera on the shelf and they have it up there for 3 months and then they go out for one shoot and then pull it back out, kind of thing.
Wait, can you guys hold on? I have to put the pictures of my cat and my coffee mug and my keyboard away.
See, exactly. I mean, and that goes to one of the main reasons the show is interesting for the TWiP network for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons is that it represents a departure in the way that we've done things for the last half a decade plus. This is the first show since the inception of the TWiP network that we've created something that was vertically focused and brand specific. So this show is specifically about Sony Alpha mirrorless cameras, right? So all of our other shows, TWiP included, are general. They're generalist. They're Switzerland. This one, we figured we're going to go, instead of going broad, we're going to go deep into this one topic. And I think the audience and the popularity of the Sony brand and the A7 series and the A6000, A6300, all these cameras that are building these giant audiences support a show like this. So congratulations on being pioneers.
Well, it's a lot of fun, like we talked about. I mean, Juan and I are both involved in not only our own professional work, but we're instructors and workshop leaders, and we're traveling, like you said. Every month we're off somewhere, and so we see and hear so much from so many different kinds of photographers. I think that we're sort of a good sounding board for the general pulse of what's going on out there. And in fact, Juan and I were doing some research last night on a topic discussion about switching from DSLR to mirrorless, and the reactions and the comments out there are extremely telling this far in to mirrorless camera life cycle, and it's actually going to be the subject of one of our very upcoming episodes that we'll be doing, I think, next week. So yeah, we're excited, and we've got a great audience, and there's a lot of people that want to hear about this, and so it's just came together real fast, and it's fun. I mean, Juan and I have as much fun putting the show topics together as we do talking about the stuff on the show.
Right. I mean, and we're trying to limit the how much we talk on the show so that we're not boring people to death, because these are a little more technical or in-depth topics. So, and we have a hard time kind of keeping it down to a manageable amount of time, because there's so much information out there that we're kind of like frothing at the mouth, kind of with all the information coming out.
Well, give me a peek into what the show is going to be about. I know what it is, but for the general TWiP audience, a lot of people will be saying, are probably thinking, well, how deep can you go? Can you get to 459 episodes like TWiP talking specifically about this topic? Tell me about how you guys are going to approach that.
Well, I think one of the things that makes that job easier for us, if you look at the amount of product announcements that Sony's making, I think Sony in this year alone, they probably made more product announcements than the established camera brands in the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. These guys are firing on all cylinders, coming up with a lot of innovations. There's a lot of things to talk about, not just on the camera front, on the lens, on the apps that these cameras have. Oh, did I already let the cat out of the bag? There's apps on these cameras, all this kind of stuff. That there's so much to talk about. And yes, we're going to go deep. I mean, for example, one episode that we just recorded recently is about the settings in the camera itself. But I think we're going to also try to go broad. We probably will have an episode on wildlife a little later on. That's going to talk about not just how to use these cameras for wildlife, but maybe we'll touch on some wildlife topics in general as well.
Well, that's the important thing, Frederick. It's not just about Sony Alpha Mirrorless. It's about photography, first and foremost, with these devices, and then general concepts about mirrorless as well. But you were talking about is there going to be enough, and can we get to 857 episodes? And I bet you we will. As a matter of fact, I think you just threw down. So Juan, I accept the challenge. Do you?
Yes, I accept the challenge. I think we're gonna
Excellent.
How much are you putting down on the table, Frederick?
Yeah. What?
You know what? I will put down. Let me see. If you guys, okay, here we go. You heard it here first on this announcement for AlphaMirrorless. If you guys get to episode 100, like when you get to, no, not if, but when you get to episode 100, I will. Let's see. What's the best way to do this?
I got to take notes.
I know. I will purchase the lens of your choice under $2,000 from B&H for you.
Deal.
Deal.
Well,
Lens of your choice from B&H. I'll have it shipped directly to you. You got to get to 100.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And I think one of the reasons why we will, as Juan just mentioned, like today we recorded and talked about settings. And it's difficult when you're talking about a visual medium, our business, our passion, in an audio kind of environment, right? But we got through the settings, but what we don't do, for example, is we didn't dive into a whole nother half-hour subject, which is just how to get yourself set up for autofocus. That'll be another episode. So a lot of things can be introduced in one discussion and then dug into much deeper in a subsequent discussion. And we're already starting to carry topics from one episode to the next. I mean, we talked about lenses for 30 or 40 minutes in one of our early episodes, but that's going to be something that'll always be talked about.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, I mean, Sony's coming out with lenses like there's no tomorrow. And I think what's different.
Well, Canon can also, but we can use them on our system, so that's fine.
That's right. That's true. We can use the Canon and Nikon lenses and all those kind of lenses. But I think what's different between like Sony and all these kind of upcoming brands. I mean, Sony's not a new brand in photography, neither is Panasonic. But what's happening now is that there is this resurgence and interest in these brands, and there's so much information out there. And these systems are so new. When you compare that to a system that's been around like I don't know, for over 10 years, like the Canon EOS system, well, there's a level of familiarity with those systems that doing a podcast that is solely focused on one of those older brands may be a little bit more difficult because you're talking about topics that a lot of people are familiar with already. There's so many new people interested in these systems, all these mirrorless camera systems that there's a lot of people are hungry for this information.
Yeah, and there's, like you said at the beginning, there's a lot of mis and disinformation out there around just mirrorless in general. And like Andy, you were saying, we're at that we're still in that, you know, I don't want to call it a transitionary period because that kind of says that one thing is going away, which it may be. DSLRs may be going away, but I think they're going to be around for quite a while, you know, but they're going to be relegated to the people that need that level of horsepower and the things that those cameras can offer that mirrorless cameras necessarily can't, at least today as state of the art. So the part of the disinformation and education that I'm looking forward to you guys providing is what are those differences? Because there's always that, well, mirrorless you can't, you know, like on Micro Four Thirds, I shoot Lumix cameras. People are saying, well, you can't get good bokeh with those cameras because the sensor's too small, or they're not fast enough for sports, or the sensor's so little you can't blow it up beyond a 4x6. You know, disinformation like that. Yeah, hopefully you guys will dispel that, right?
You see that print behind me on the wall, Frederick? That big elephant?
Yeah.
That's from a Panasonic GX7.
Oh wow! Look at that. See,
it's 5 feet wide. I mean, so yeah, those are the kinds of things that we need to do. There's a lot of myths that need to be busted. You know, there's a lot of discussions that need to be had so that people can truly understand, you know, the capabilities out there. But it's going to be, you know, definitely about that, centered around Sony Alpha mirrorless cameras and bodies. So we'll definitely be talking gear. We hope to give news. We hope to give, you know, gear advice and talk about the technology. We hope to find out about accessories. And then on every episode, we want to talk about techniques and, you know, how to photograph different kinds of things better. For example, we hope to give some of our wisdom that we have and learn about whether it's an app or a handy device that we use on a photo trip or a technique in Lightroom even. I mean, it could be almost anything. Yeah. And so to paraphrase somebody famous, you might, you know, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, who said that? Forrest Gump, right?
Yeah, Forrest Gump.
So I'm looking at it. When I think of this show and these kinds of shows, I think of them as kind of like, you know, I'm in California, so there's lots of car clubs and things like that around. So I think of it as like a Corvette club, right? So you go to these Corvette clubs, and all the people that own all these different various Corvettes get together and share their love for Corvettes. But the meetings that they have, yeah, they'll you know, go back and forth about the different carburetors and tires and all this stuff. But it's about their love of driving. In the end, they love driving, and this show is about the love of photography. You guys, your weapon of choice to execute that photography happens to be Sony Alpha brand cameras. And that's the glue that holds everyone together. But in the end, you're photographers, right?
Yep.
Right. Yeah, yes, absolutely. About photography first and foremost. These are just the tools of our choice. You know, and you can, you know, as they say, you know, the photograph is made by the photographer, not by the camera itself. I mean, you can give a skilled photographer any kind of camera, and they'll still come up with a good end result. But the tools that we end up using are the ones going to enable us to have a better experience, have, you know, better chance of capturing, you know, the images that we've had in our mind. Now, so let's get here, Frederick. You asked a question about, you know, what really makes the mirrorless all that compelling compared to the DSLRs? Because I agree with you, the DSLRs are going to be around for a while. They're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And there's, you know, I would imagine that they're going to be around forever, only because, you know, they have their place. Mirrorless cameras have lots of advantages, but they do have the disadvantages, you know, and I think one of the biggest disadvantages that we have today is that most of these mirrorless camera systems are pretty young. They're pretty immature compared to, you know, the Sony EOS system that's been around, you know, for over the Canon EOS system. And, yeah, I'm telling you, these brands are gonna like.
Is there an acquisition? I don't know about happening one.
Yeah.
Stock market crashes.
Yeah. You know, the Canon EOS system, you know, that system has been around for over 10 years, and you know, there's a lot of knowns there, and there's been a lot of time to refine that system and come up with, you know, refinements along the way by, you know, a plethora of photographers. I think that, you know, even though Sony, for example, you know, kind of brought in the history from Minolta. You know, there's still, you look at this system and you can tell there's some growing pains in here. So not everything is rosy, and we're going to talk about those growing pains and those little kinks in the system as well. But
it's still exciting to see what's happening on, you know, just a very regular and frequent basis. about improvements that are coming across all the different manufacturers of mirrorless. But certainly Sony is coming out with new stuff all the time, and we're talking about it already on the show. Improvements being made, from my perspective, much faster than improvements got made over the last 15 years of DSLR.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you guys remember? You remember back in the day when, when I jumped into the game, my first camera was a Nikon. What was it? F3, I believe it was. So film, all manual, tank. Like I think it was made out of the same stuff Sherman tanks were made out of.
Right. You could hammer a nail with it.
Yeah, literally, a lot of people did. Yeah. But that era, when we went from the F3 to the F4, which was all curvy and sleek and beautiful and all that, there were like years between these camera releases, and it was a big deal when a new body came out. It was like, okay, yes, the obvious differences and the advances in this new body completely make my old one obsolete, and I have to have that new one. You fast forward to today, and the changes are marked, but they're more incremental. So do you guys agree with that? I mean, yeah, even Sony's advancing and releasing these new, amazing, better and better camera bodies, but at the same time, it's not the F3 or the first Canon camera to now, that kind of delta.
Totally incremental is a good word. It's happening and happening regularly. I've always advised people to buy your lenses and the bodies come and go. Invest in good glass. And I think that's another reason why Juan and I are so excited about this system, not just because it's mirrorless, but because it's Sony mirrorless. There's such a wide variety of glass that we can put on these different camera bodies using adapters. So it's not just whatever Sony decides that they want to market as native lenses, which, by the way, okay, when they came out 3-4 years ago, there wasn't much. And now there's, I don't know, too many to count. Yeah. Huge number, of actual Sony native E and FE mount lenses. It's a great selection. There's definitely some holes, and Juan and I are talking about them. But then when you count anything else you can add to this system just by using a pretty simple adapter, and that's another example of the technology that's changing so rapidly, is the adapters are getting better.
Well, that was the thing. That was the thing. I mean, part of the allure to mirrorless is the whole idea, on Micro Four Thirds, on Fuji, etc., and Sony, you can use your legacy glass on there. But to date, and hopefully you guys clear this up for me, to date, those adapters essentially turned your expensive piece of glass into a manual piece of glass.
Not always. Not always.
That's what's changing so fast.
Yeah, there's some adapters, like the one that I use is from a company called Metabones, that actually gives you full electronic control of your Canon glass. You get the image stabilization, you get all the aperture control, everything goes through that connection. So yeah, you don't have the autofocus is not as fast as it is on a native Canon system, but the autofocus works beautifully as well. You don't, for example, I can't follow that bald eagle coming in to catch a fish in the water. The autofocus is not that good when you have the adapters. But I can certainly follow a bison running across, or
I was going to say you can follow that elephant that's behind Andy back there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But even that though, Juan, as we were talking in our show, that's changing, and other companies are announcing stuff that's going to take advantage of the technological achievements that are coming from Sony on the mirrorless system, namely the super fast, super sensitive autofocus system on their full frame body now. So we're going to be talking about that kind of stuff in our very upcoming episodes.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to have both of you guys address this, one of the other arguments that has been coming up increasingly lately has been, to date, the whole, quote, mirrorless movement, part of it, or at least a big part of it, has been about size and weight.
You just read my mind, yeah.
Yeah, the weight advantages that you get by moving to mirrorless, these giant DSLRs, and, like Andy, you were saying, some people that, as you get older, you may not want to be carrying all that weight around with you, and it's attractive to move to a smaller system with no mirror, because that means everything's smaller. However,
Yeah.
we're seeing large sizes show up on the mirrorless side now that are kind of taking that argument away. What do you guys
Well,
say?
there are two. I think there are two things to think about in that respect from mirrorless side. There are two types of mirrorless systems. You have the full frame systems, and then you'll have the crop sensor systems, like the Micro Four Thirds or the APS-C.
Yep.
On the Sony side, you have full frame, and you have APS-C sized sensors. Now, when you're talking full frame, yes, you're not the size advantage is not going to be there because you're still dealing with a full frame sensor, so you need the lenses to project that circle, in the sensor to actually fill that full frame. So yes, you are not gaining any advantage on the size perspective when you're dealing with full frame. But when you're dealing with the crop sensor cameras, certainly you have now the advantage of the smaller lenses and the smaller body and whatnot. You still have this smaller body on the full frame cameras because you don't have that mirror. They're much smaller, much thinner, and they're packing a lot more. The electronics are tighter in those systems as well. Now, and that's a big misconception because you're right. A lot of people think, oh, mirrorless is all about size, right? I want to carry less. To me, the size is a side benefit. The reason for example, out of all the mirrorless systems, and I tested not all of them, but a lot of them, the reason first and foremost I went with Sony is the image quality, is not necessarily the size. The size was a nice bonus. But when you look at the files that come out of these cameras, the Sony cameras, the Sony sensors, you drool over these files because the dynamic range, the clarity, the detail on them is just outstanding.
I mean, is it that much different from? I mean, Micro Four Thirds obviously it's math, right? So you're getting more data there to look at. But I hear a similar kind of argument from people on the Fuji side, where they're saying the images that come out of these Fuji XT series cameras is just amazing and flooring, and what's the difference?
I think at some point that you're splitting hairs for sure, and. Most of us, Juan said it before, we're not pixel peepers, but in the end, sometimes you have to be able to, you got to know how well your sensor's doing in the shadows. What's the dynamic range,
right.
and people like Juan and me and you, Frederick, we look at an image and we can just tell. We don't have to use mathematical values typically, and we rarely do. But I think the image quality is there when you're comparing Fuji, Sony and all that. I'm not going to get involved in that at all. I will tell you that having shot the Panasonic system for good 2+ years while I was going through some orthopedic issues, let's say, and having a couple of surgeries, I did need to go light. I needed to be super, super light, and so I carried that Panasonic GX7 and the little tiny lenses, right? There is a size difference right there. And because of the people, we see a lot of people that, they're in this for their passion. They want a camera that has all the manual controls. They want to be able to do all the same things that they're doing on their, pick one, Nikon, Canon, Pentax, I don't care, DSLR. And they want to be able to do all the same things, shoot raw, get great images, but they don't want to carry the brick.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell you how many GX7s and GX8s I've sold over the years to clients who just prefer to carry something a little lighter and have a smaller lens. What is the 24 millimeter Panasonics or Olympus lenses? I mean, they weigh like an ounce.
They're like that big, yeah. You put them in your pocket. And
honestly, so some mirrorless, there is a definite size advantage because those people can get, in my opinion, the same image quality as many other APS-C DSLRs. I mean, yeah, you're going to split hairs. You have resolution difference, but I will argue the quality is just darn near equal. Now, when you can go from Micro Four Thirds to a full frame, there's going to be a difference in image quality, and you're going to pay that price. As Juan said, the body is almost the same size. The lenses are almost the same size. There's no arguing or working around physics. You can't change it.
Yeah, don't buy a motorcycle expecting to, take your family on a cross-country vacation. Right?
Exactly, and there are some things, both Juan and I wish, we wish the batteries weren't so wimpy, and they are, honestly.
Yeah.
So that's an example, but no, we don't ever tell people that, size, is going to be the big difference maker. Size matters.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does.
I've been preaching that for years, but. All right.
I guess what I was trying to get at is this is not a one-issue thing. You know what I'm saying? Is there are multiple reasons why you do mirrorless. Yes, for some people it's going to be the size of the camera, the size of the gear they're carrying. But other people are going to be quality. For other people are, you know, the electronic viewfinders, for example, which to me is something that a lot of people don't talk about, and it is huge. It's a huge advantage that you have a electronic viewfinder in which I can have, while I'm looking through my viewfinder, I can have the histogram right there, and I can make adjustments to my image without, you know, having to pull back my eye, look at the back, and look at the histogram on the back of the camera. I can do that right through the viewfinder. To me, that's huge.
And there's a lot of these advances. It's funny, you know, a lot of these advances, and I use the word advances in quotes because this stuff has been here forever in the video world, right?
Yes.
So basically, we're just taking video technology and making it, putting it in a form factor that photographers can get their brain around, right? So all this overlay and seeing what you're doing, and what you see is what you get when you adjust your f-stop, i.e. iris. You know, it's
and zebras and focus peaking. How about
all that? Yeah, they've had that for decades, and we're just getting it, and it's like, you know, Steve Jobs inventing something. You know?
Right. It's all about the marketing.
Yeah, it's all about the market. But everything that's old is new again. So one of the things I want to throw at you guys is, you know, we talk about, you know, this kind of transition from DSLRs to mirrorless, and, you know, splitting hairs on image quality and all that. But is it really necessary to split hairs? In other words, do photographers, we as photographers, we tend to be, and I'm speaking from experience, been shooting for, you know, a couple of decades, we tend to be very myopic when it comes to our gear, our computers, our phones, everything. You know, I'm an Apple guy, I'm a Nikon guy, I'm a Sony, you know, which is great, but do we have to be monogamous when it comes to our camera gear? In other words, can I get a Sony and shoot that when I go on one of you guys' amazing workshops to Africa or someplace, and then come home and carry around a Panasonic? Is there a law that says I can't do that? Other than my bank account.
You know,
I was going to say it's the law of finances. But
yeah, other than the IRS. You know?
Well, Juan's a good example of somebody who's shooting both. I mean, he still has a Canon system and long Canon glass. I, on workshops, will shoot. Mark and I have a Nikon D810 and a long Nikon lens that we take to Africa, and I'll use that interchangeably. So we have been what I like to call bicameral.
Love it. I love
it. Bicameral.
You know, but most people aren't going to be that way at all. There's
money, yeah,
it's money, and it's also a hassle factor. You got to learn different menus.
Right.
You got to have different batteries and chargers, and just different everything, different filter. It becomes an issue. So I think the average person is not going to ever do that, you know. But yeah, somebody who's really into their passion and their craft, and they want to go get a cool mirrorless body for awesome street photography, pick up, you know, the small Sony, the small Panasonic, heck, the small Fuji. I know a lot of people shooting with it, and then maybe they take out on their landscape photography trips where they go 3 times a year to someplace awesome. They take some big full frame, you know, Alpha 7 R2 and, you know, $3,000 worth of wide angle lenses. More power to them.
I know. It just gets me the argument, because I think a lot of this argument comes from the manufacturers, where they want you to be in their ecosystem and only their ecosystem, and photographers buy into that when you don't really need to. Like if I'm going to Africa with you, Andy, I'm on one of those workshops, I'm gonna bring my Lumix gear with me, of course, but if I get this once in a lifetime shot of, you know, some gorilla and her baby or something, I want as many pixels as I can possibly get of that.
Well, you want to know a dirty little secret? I did go to Africa 4 times during my orthopedic issue phase, and I carried 3 of those 4 times. I carried the Panasonic GX7 and that cheap little 1-300 consumer zoom telephoto.
Yeah,
and I shot and got amazing. You know, I'm selling those images. I'm printing them big.
So awesome.
And I made up for it by sometimes I would take a panorama of an elephant. So instead of 1 frame, I would use. Oh, you know how awesome what is it called? The 35-100 Panasonic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 70-200 equivalent, right?
Yep.
I would use that glass and do a panorama of an elephant or a giraffe or whatever it was, and then stitch it together, and all of a sudden I got myself 60 or 70 megapixels instead of 20.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, you hit on one thing that I wanted to transition the conversation into. One of the main reasons why I have multiple Lumix cameras and why I love the Micro Four Thirds system is because the menuing system on Lumix fits with my brain, and I can get around on any of my cameras. I know where everything is. I know the limitations and the advantages.
And you have touchscreen.
And I have a touchscreen. So question number one, are you guys, so this is Devil's Advocate on the AlphaMirrorless show. You got to send a message to Sony's engineers on their UI.
Right. Yeah. No. This is. And remember, I talked about
what is that?
Remember, I talked about. There is some immaturity or growth that needs to happen, and that to me is absolutely right. I mean, and we've talked about this just on this past episode that we recorded. Is, to me, the menuing system on the Sony is a mess. It is not well organized. I'm used to coming from the Canon system, whose system has been really well organized. They've had decades to organize this system and know how things merge with each other. In the Sony system, I'm going from one thing to another just to make two changes to the camera. Yeah. It's a little crazy. So absolutely, that's one of the areas that I think that the Sony system can benefit from a little bit of growth. But going back to one of the things that Andy was saying is, I started the way I transitioned from Canon to Sony is I bought a little point and shoot, the A6000.
Yeah.
And I carried that with me in a bunch of different places to try it out and see how that would work. Then the next step I did was get an adapter to use my Canon glass with the Sony camera. Yeah. Again, didn't have to start buying all new glass, and little by little kind of doing that transition. So that's something, because we hear that a lot of people say, well, I'm married to my, I have such an investment in Canon glass, I have such an investment in Nikon glass, and I'm like, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But get a little adapter and use that system, from one to the other. But there's still some growth that needs to happen.
Have an open relationship with your glass, right?
Yes, have an open relationship with your camera system. Just don't put the cameras next to each other, because they really will go after it.
Yeah, that's not
You'll get
good.
A cat fight right there. But
that is not good. Andy, you hit on something that's near and dear to my heart. Another reason why I'm glued to my current system, the Lumix system, and it's the touchscreen.
Yeah.
So I love the touchscreen. It seems like, and we've talked about this on TWiP and on All About the Gear ad nauseum, the idea that we are now trained to, when we see a screen like this, we can touch it.
Yes.
We can touch it and do stuff with
Hallelujah.
it. What's up with that?
No.
Yeah, well, he's addressing me.
Juan, you say no?
I think he said Andy.
We'll let Andy talk, and then I'll talk.
Oh, I want to hear this. This is a cage fight. Go.
A cage fight. This fight.
Having used a very, very awesome system for a couple years, that Lumix system, I got used to the touchscreen. Every bit about it. For when you're on the tripod and you want to pick a focus point, boop, tap, and you're done. Yeah. You want to review your image and zoom in, you pinch and zoom, and you're zooming in. Everything about it just is so much faster and easier. And I think that Sony, needs to do it. I wish they would. I've been wishing for a couple years. It's not a deal breaker for me, obviously. Yeah. I just wish they had it. The people that I think object to it have said to me, well, they don't want the touchscreen being activated like when they bring their camera up to their eye or something. Well, it turns off when you do that. So I don't see why they can't be best of both worlds. If Juan wants to stay being a dinosaur, acting like an old man who can't make a change and all that, then fine, let him have the menus and let him navigate with a control wheel. And then for the more enlightened people, Frederick, like you and me,
yes, or lazy
or enlightened, either way, right? Yeah. We can have the touchscreen.
Well, I'm not opposed to the touchscreen. What I'm opposed to is to having the touchscreen on all the time. If I were able to control when the touchscreen is available to me and when it isn't,
you can.
That would be great. For example, if I was able to have the touchscreen only when I'm reviewing images, because absolutely the point in the zoom in and zoom out is kind of nice. Or for example, when I'm using the menuing system, one of the problems that I've had when I've had people in workshops with the Panasonic systems with the touchscreen is that they, by accident, touch that touchscreen and change settings all the time, or they change the focus point, and they don't even know that they've done it. And because it doesn't have kind of a safeguard to prevent accidental touch.
I think all systems.
I'm not saying with the nose. I'm just saying with their fingers.
We
the
saw
camera's
this
on a tripod.
We saw this last week in Iceland. There needs to be a safeguard on every system. I don't care what camera, mirrorless, DSLR. The settings, like if you want to change things, you have to. There should be a switch you turn that
like
activates the ability to change things.
Yeah.
Because we get people, honestly, we see it all the time. They're touching buttons left and right, and they don't know what they touched.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like with on all these camera systems, Lumix included, there are the custom settings. I should be able to say, okay, I'm going to be shooting this kind of photography, hit that custom setting, have the camera automatically configure itself. But then, like you're saying, Andy, wouldn't it be great to have a physical lock or something on there to say, yeah, stay in this mode until I tell you to get out of this mode. I don't care what I do to the camera, because I may be running up and down a mountain or whatever. Lock it and stay right there so I can have confidence the next time I get ready to shoot, it's in that same exact position. I think that's Sony, Fuji, Panasonic, if you're listening, that's your next feature. Put that.
Yeah, I mean, how long did it take, for example, for Canon to put a lock on the little mode dial?
Yeah.
It wasn't until like 2 or 3 years ago that they did that. For the longest time, you could hit that mode dial and change the setting, willy-nilly. And I think that, my objection to the touchscreen is not that I'm a dinosaur, because I do have a smartphone.
That doesn't count, Juan.
Yeah.
That doesn't count. When everyone is super, no one is super.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to do it in a smart way, in a way that doesn't make it easier for people to screw up the settings on their camera. Because that's the experience that I've seen with a lot of people, is that having that touchscreen makes it that much easier for people to mess up the settings and not know what they're doing. So as long as we have that, and I'm able to configure when it goes on and when it goes off, I'm all for the touchscreen.
Well, that is. Let's just position this as I had that issue early on when I started using Panasonic cameras, but you learn how to use your hardware and it quickly goes away. It's
but I think
when it comes on, when it goes off, all that stuff.
Juan's point is a good one, and let's give everybody best of both worlds. Personally, I think that this issue and others are controlled less by marketing and product development and more by legal departments. I bet you there's some patents involved, for example, that is preventing touchscreen from being out on the cameras today on the Sony world. I'm just speculating, but why? I mean, come on. It's 2016 and every device we own is touchscring,
right,
including the screen I'm looking at you guys on right now.
Yeah.
My
watch.
Not my right, the watch. My thermostat is
Wait a minute,
touchscreen.
I don't have one.
It's becoming increasingly obvious the lack of a touchscreen on devices that feel like they obviously should have. I could see on a television, you don't want fingerprints, yada yada, all that stuff. But even then, I would like a touchscreen, at least a touch area on there. It just feels like it's the way things are done these days. So. All right, one last question for you guys before we jump into
we know
the
that size matters and touching is important.
Thank you. Perfect. You see where I'm going with all this? Where's my long lens? I forgot.
Oh, no.
You started it. Okay, so when Sony launched the A7 series cameras, they launched it with an A7 and there was the A7 II, right? I believe those were the two cameras that they initially kicked out. If I get that right. And one was, they looked identical, and they still look identical. They looked identical, but one was specifically more of a landscaper's camera where it wanted to be on a tripod, and it had, like, when you hit the button, there were two shutter activations in there. It was like clunk, clunk. And then another one, the other Sony A7 was specifically for kind of street photography and running more casual photography, but they look the same. And now there are multiple A7s in the line that all look pretty much the same. How do people that are thinking, hey, I heard about this AlphaMirrorless podcast, I want to get on there because I need help making the decision on which one of these Alpha cameras to get, how do they know which one to buy?
Hey, for Frederick, we have an episode just for you. We have an episode that we already released called, What's with the Alphabet Soup?
There you go.
Yeah, we walk through that, all the different cameras right now and what their strengths are and who should use them for what and whatnot. So we have that right there. Have you listened to the podcast yet?
I've heard about it. I haven't listened to that episode yet, no.
But like anything, it can be confusing. Our aim with the show is to simplify things. I mean, one of the guiding principles that Juan and I both have as we're teaching anyone is to, KISS, right? Keep it. Oh, we got KISS is important too. Keep it simple, stupid, right? I mean, so simplifying, and you can have a long spec sheet of 95 things, but in the end, each of these cameras is suited for pretty much a particular type of shooting.
Right.
And we do our best to outline the differences. And one way also to think about it is, there's the initial generation and then an incremental change, and then there's kind of the next generation with the A7R2 and the Sony A6300 and the advances in sensor and the advances in autofocus and the advances in video. It's just so much.
Yeah.
But our goal is to try to give people a very genuine understanding so that they can make an informed decision. Because you're right, it's not easy. It really isn't today.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about these price points, and it's not only the price point to get into the system, but it's an investment. It's a long-term investment because you're going to be buying more lenses and accessories, and you don't get these days back in your life, right? You don't like the cameras that you choose to shoot with and that you choose to take on one of these workshops or whatever. The images that you come back with, you may go back to that place again, but you're not going to make those images again. So, so it's critical that you choose the right tool for this. So
yeah, and and even though because our podcast is about Sony camera systems, neither Andy nor I are kind of like camera geeks in that we're not gadget geeks. Our cameras are tools. We don't get married.
You're talking about me, aren't you? I know. I see you looking at me.
I am. No. For us, they're tools, and to me, I'm not married to any one camera or really any one system at this point. If I find another camera that actually performs exactly what I want it to do, I'm fine with that as well. So I think one of my fears is that people will peg us or peg the podcast as a gear hound kind of show, and we don't want to be that at all. I think we're going to be talking a lot about gear because that's exactly what we're trying to introduce people to and understand the gear. But it's not because as you said to me, I'm not a fanboy. I love the system, but I am not blinded by the strength of the system today. I'm very well aware of the limitations and keep those in the foreground. That's why in the show, if you look at our show notes on the show, we have a little segment. We have the picks of the week, but before the picks of the week, we have the wish of the week, which are basically our wishes for how to make this system better. In other words, we're kind of picking out the limitations of the system and what we like those limitations, how we like those limitations to be corrected.
I love it. I love it. So you guys, you don't have digital Stockholm syndrome, right?
No. Yeah, and I do not own any stock in Sony either. So.
There you go. There you go. Neither do I. Neither do I. But that's good. Oh, well, I don't know if I do or not. It might be in a mutual fund or something.
Well, yeah, that could be possible.
Yeah, that doesn't count. That doesn't count because it's diluted. Right. Okay.
You don't control it.
And exactly, I have no control over that at all. All right, so we went over lots of stuff. I got lots of notes here. We went over the A7. You guys have a show, Alphabet Soup, that talks about that. We talked about lens mounts. We talked about Andy claiming size doesn't matter. Juan claiming touching doesn't matter. All kinds of stuff. So this is good. This is going to be a really good show. So on TWiP we do this segment where, as you guys may know, called Picks of the Week, where you guys can pick something to recommend to the TWiP listening audience. In this case, I'm assuming it's going to be something Sony Alpha related, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Maybe.
Doesn't have to be. I'm leaving. As long as it's photography related, you're all good. So all right, Andy, you go first.
Yeah. So if you had made that bet, Frederick, you would have lost.
Oh.
Because my pick of the week has nothing to do with Sony. And nothing to do with mirrorless. The big news this week has been that Google has made the Nick collection free for downloading. And my recommendation is that you go ahead and type into the Google box Nick collection, N-I-K, and get one of the best plugin sets out there for free. I mean, this is something people used to pay $500 and $600 for. Then Google bought Nick, and then it was for sale for $150, and now it's absolutely free. I know there's a lot of talk about it out there, whether that means it's going to die or whether Google's going to give it
talked
up.
about that. Yeah.
I don't know. You know, okay, so what? It's free. Get it and enjoy it.
I love it.
Enjoy it while you can, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. We talked about, I think, that last week on TWiP, and we brought up that very same topic. Andy, is that the harbinger or the crypt keeper coming to take Nick away, what did I say? I thought maybe this was Google, their first step in incorporating it into that code base into Google Photos or something like that. So,
yeah.
Who knows?
Totally, but anyway, that's my pick of the week. Get the Nick collection from Google.
Yep. Get it right now. Type in, what do they type in the Google search box? Just Nick or Google Nick or?
I just type in Nick N-I-K collection and they'll find it.
There you go. Perfect. Excellent. Andy, that was your first ever pick of the week on This Week in Photo.
All right.
Look at that.
I feel so awesome.
You're no longer a TWiP virgin. Okay?
Oh, man.
This show is going really down.
I know. It's
we're gonna get fan mail now.
We have a good show.
Frederick, can I have a cigarette?
Exactly. Well, Andy, go make me a sandwich.
Oh,
I love it. Send your mail to AM.
No.
You won.
I kid. All right, Juan's turning colors over there.
Oh my God.
All right, Juan.
I could just imagine all the email that we're gonna get. Okay, so my pick is actually more predictable. My pick of the week is the little Sony A6300. This is the little mirrorless, newly released. It was just released a couple weeks ago. Mirrorless camera from Sony, the A6300. Believe it or not, Sony claims that it has the most phase detect autofocus sensors in it. It's the fastest autofocus system in the world, absolutely. So, and it's only $1,000. Incredible image quality, really small. I can't recommend it enough. I've been playing with it quite a bit recently since I got it, and I'm absolutely love the camera. As a matter of fact, just today, Andy and I recorded a whole episode of the AlphaMirrorless podcast on the A6300. We went through what we liked about the A6300, what's new about it, and actually that episode will be out, I think, before this show comes out. So by the time you're listening to this, we would have already released that episode.
Oh, you guys are on fire. I have the page up now, and it looks like body only. It's $1,000.
Right.
The body plus the 16 to 50 millimeter kit lens, $1,150.
And I'll tell you that little kit lens is the one that I have on the camera right now, and it's a really tiny little kit lens. That's not the one that shows in the picture. That one is a different lens. The little kit lens is, and I'll show you guys here if you look at my video feed. It's a tiny little lens, almost like a pancake lens, and this is a lens that I keep on all the time on the camera, and I almost use it like a little cap on the camera itself because I can use this to grab shots, and it's almost pocketable like this. But I can also put my big, heavy, long glass, whether it's my 16 to 35 or the 24 to 240 or anything like that as well. So, anyways.
Okay, so since you have that in your hand, how sensitive is the touchscreen on that thing?
Yeah.
I've been pressing really hard, and I dented it on the back, and it still doesn't work. I don't know.
Broke his screen.
I love it. Yeah, that's cool. When that A6000 came out, I heard nothing but good things about that thing. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, Robert Evans, who had one, and he was just raving about how he was just able to get shots that he never got before because of the instant-on nature of that thing. Like you turn it on, and by the time you have it up to snap a picture, you can just blast off 25 pictures, and 90% of them are in focus. And so magic. You gotta love this stuff. It's really, really amazing. I don't have a pick of the week. My pick of the week is a podcast called AlphaMirrorless, and you can get to it at alphamirrorless.com or go to thisweekinphoto.com and click on AlphaMirrorless in the menu bar. You'll find it. Go to one of the episode pages and subscribe to the show and listen. And I would say, even if you're not a Sony shooter, you guys, like we've demonstrated in this show, you guys are going to have a lot of fun with it. You guys are going to talk about Sony stuff. You're going to talk about other stuff. You're going to talk about mirrorless. But more importantly, how to navigate that menuing system on
We have a whole series on episodes on that. Probably 5 shows in. No, I'm just kidding.
On how to get to the multiple exposure setting.
Right.
It's not going to be any problem getting to 100 episodes, Frederick.
Right.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Guys, this has been fantastic. Andy Williams, where can people go to check out some of the work that you do, maybe check out some of the workshops that you're involved in, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I'm super excited to have Juan on our team as well for that. It's munchworkshops.com, M-U-E-N-C-H, workshops.com, and that shows about 50 different places we're heading around the world in 16 and 17, and more stuff coming.
Look at that. M-U-N, say the URL again?
M-U-E-N-C-H, munchworkshops.com.
Excellent. And we'll link to that in the show notes for this
thanks.
episode. And people can click right over to that. Cool. All right. Well, welcome to the TWiP family, sir. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Juan Pons, what about you? Where can people go other than AlphaMirrorless.com to check you out?
I was going to say, you can go to AlphaMirrorless.com. But no, you can also go to my website. That's juanpons.org. That's JUANPONS.org. And in there, you'll find links to my workshops that I do through Munch Workshops as well. We do these workshops all over the world, a lot of really cool places, so go and check them out. And you can find me there and find some of my pictures and some of the videos, instructional stuff that I do as well.
I love it. Well, before we sign off, so Munch Workshops, give me what's the elevator pitch about that organization? How does it work, and what's the average price of the workshops and all that?
All-inclusive, total immersion, photo experience at the coolest places on the planet. We really try to put together unique offerings. I mean, an example, we just went to Death Valley. Okay, a lot of people go to Death Valley, but we do it a little differently. I hire outfitters that come all the way from Flagstaff, Arizona, and they drive a truck way out in the middle of nowhere at the racetrack and at Eureka Dunes in Death Valley, and we set up a private camp for a couple of nights where we have a cook and a dining tent and sleeping bags and sleeping tents and all that. Everything's set up. All our people do is come out and take photographs, and when they need to crash, they crash. When they need to eat, they eat. It's all done for them. And it's kind of a unique experience, in Death Valley that is very hard to sort of replicate on your own. Juan and I just did another trip in Iceland 10 days ago, and we have a guide and a good friend that we've been working with there for years and years. His name is Scarpy, and he and I put together itineraries that sort of take us off the beaten path, places where Iceland's becoming so popular. So, we're going in August and in May and in September of this year to Iceland with itineraries that nobody is doing because they don't know about it, really. And we're taking people places where they're not going to run into 500 other photographers. They're going to get unique imagery. We're teaching constantly all the time. I even got to put Juan to work. We had a day and a half where we were socked in because of hurricane winds and weather. So we did a Lightroom class for a day and a half with the 10 guests that were with us in Iceland. So I think that's kind of the experience. All-inclusive, total immersion. This is not a vacation. We like to say
that's what we like to say. This is not a vacation because you leave so tired you need a vacation from the.
That's good. That's good. So if you go on one of these workshops, you should book a kind of regeneration a couple of days afterwards.
Yeah, massages afterwards, a spa. That would be wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, yeah, definitely. We'll link to that in the show notes for this episode. Congratulations again to both of you guys.
Thank
it's going to
you.
be a fantastic show. The first 4 episodes, I'm watching the stats now, on fire. I think you've hit a vein, and, remember what I said, episode 100, what's going to happen?
Okay.
Well, no, and Frederick, we want to say thank you also for inviting us to be a part of the TWiP network. I think that this is a good way to launch a kind of vertically aligned workshop. When Andy and I were talking about this, kind of doing this on our own would not have been as much fun as doing something, aligned with you guys, with your network that you're building. I think that what you're doing is pretty cool, and it expands the possibilities that people have. When they listen to TWiP, they can actually look at things that are a little more aligned with their personal interests. So we're really excited about being part of the TWiP family.
All right. Well, welcome. And I want to remind the TWiP audience that, you can subscribe to this podcast, obviously, over at thisweekinphoto.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and, leave us a comment, a like, or, all that good stuff there. We're also on Twitter and Facebook and all the usual places. And yeah, and most of all, for this episode, the whole purpose of this episode was to get you to introduce to these guys. So please head over to AlphaMirrorless.com, which is the home for this podcast. Subscribe to these guys. Leave them feedback on iTunes. The feedback on iTunes helps raise the visibility of the show. Plus, it lets them know what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and what you like to hear more of and less of and all that stuff. So you guys, you read every single comment that's posted.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Right? Yeah. So get in there, leave some feedback for these guys, subscribe to the show, and enjoy. And leave us feedback on AlphaMirrorless on TWiP as well. There's a contact form on TWiP where you can do a pull down and send messages directly to these guys. So there's no reason for you not to be in contact with AlphaMirrorless or This Week in Photo. All right, guys, we're going to leave it at that, and my signature sign-off line is, it's time to take that lens cap off.